The Melbourne Storm, the club everybody wants to be because they finished third in a dud season. Unless you're a Storm fan, chances are you generally dislike the Melbourne club. Now that's not rare in the NRL. Clubs like the Roosters, Brisbane and Manly have been known to have their fair share of haters over the years, but with Melbourne it's different. That dislike comes from a place of respect and admiration, wanting to be Melbourne, wanting to have the consistent success that Melbourne have. It's jealousy, it's not genuine hatred. And I know what people will say, because every time I compliment the Storm, people bring up the salary cap cheating. But that was a decade and a half ago. It does not change any of the things I'm complimenting them on now. The benefits that cheating brought them are long gone, and yet we're still sitting here in 2024 knowing that this new season Melbourne are going to be at the pointy end of the table once again. The biggest gain for the Melbourne Storm for me is Shawn Blore. Blore being a guy who is very, very highly touted. People who watch reserve grade tend to say that this guy has all of the talent in the world. He's obviously struggled to find form on the field with the Tigers over recent seasons just because of these long-term injuries that he's suffered. I think with any young forward, you spend that amount of time out of the game, it's going to be tough to show your best footy on the field. The Melbourne last season seemed to be one strike forward short. They seem to just have too many guys who will do a job for you, but that's about it. Blore is the solution to that problem, in my opinion. Whether it be this season or later on in his career, he is a guy who is explosive, who will provide X factor, and who will complement the likes of Josh King getting through the hard yards for you and finish off the opportunities that hard work provides. Their biggest loss is the reason they got Shawn Blore, Justin Olam, who has been a really, really good player for Melbourne for a very, very long time. Obviously, last season he wasn't picked a great deal in first grade. I'm not sure why. I don't think the logic behind that ever got out, but presumably something was going on behind the scenes at the Storm. But he was once a Dally M Centre of the Year in Melbourne, and there's a reason for that. He was extremely, extremely good, and Melbourne will have a very tough task replacing him. My number one talking point for the Storm is the number 1 jersey. Pappenhausen Mini Fa'alongo. Now, to me, the question of who starts is a very, very easy one to answer because I think Ryan Pappenhausen is a fantastic footballer. He has won a Clive Churchill, he's been knocking on the door of the New South Wales Origin side at his best form, and he is one of the fastest players in the NRL. Thankfully, during the trials, we got to see a little bit of that speed and see that despite all of these really horrible leg injuries, he does still retain that speed. Nick Meaney did a fantastic job for them last season. I think he exceeded everyone's expectations and became a bit of a standout player for Melbourne. So I do think he deserves a spot in the side, and I agree with those who put him in the centre position. I've never seen Meaney play centre. He's obviously played fullback, wing, and I believe a bit of 5'8" over his career, but he seems to have all of the ability required to play centre. So as long as he can learn the defensive structures, I don't think he will struggle there at all. Then finally, Sua Fa'alongo, who, Jesus Christ, this boy set the world alight against the Kangaroos last season. I can't find a spot for him in my starting 13, and I really don't like having outside backs on the bench, but I think with a guy as talented as him, you just have to bite the bullet and do it. And luckily for him, Craig Bellamy is the kind of coach who has been known to do that. Example A, Ryan Pappenhausen, who early on in his career was coming off the bench in jersey 17 and really causing havoc through the middle. I think that's exactly what the plan will be for Fa'alongo this season. What the long-term solution is, I'm really not sure, because Fa'alongo won't wait around on the bench forever, and high-quality fullbacks are a very valuable commodity in this game. We'll see probably the likes of James Tedesco retire in coming years, and the thought of a cashed-up Roosters coming for one of those two boys is going to make the prospect of keeping both Pappenhausen and Fa'alongo a very, very big challenge for Melbourne. Next up, we've got, is Blore the man they were missing? Now, I got into this a little bit earlier, talking about his X factor, but it is a lot of pressure on a very young and very inexperienced forward at a club with the expectations of Melbourne. I think if we do see the best of Blore this year, it won't be until the back end of the season when he has learnt all the Storm systems and found his role in the team. But I do have a lot of belief in him. He was the man coming through. He captained all the New South Wales junior teams and really, really dominated at that level. And I think once he gets the opportunity to consistently show it against men in the NRL, we will see what all this hype is about. Last but certainly not least though, we've got, could Bellamy's future be a distraction? Now, it looks like finally Craig Bellamy may retire this season. I mean, it's a storyline that goes around every year, and Bellamy will always extend, much to everyone's delight, but this looks like it might actually be it. And so there's a lot of pressure on Melbourne to let him retire with a premiership win. But until that decision is made final, it'll be an absolute media circus around the future of one of the best coaches in the NRL, and you never want that level of attention on your team. I think the Storm are one of the best equipped teams to deal with any issue that comes their way, but this can be quite the distraction, and when you're looking to aim to win a premiership, any minor disadvantage is a disadvantage. By no means do I think it's an excuse for the Melbourne Storm. I mean, the Storm players will be the first people to tell you that there are no excuses, but I think they'd be lying if they told you it wasn't there in the back of their minds, and given that this is a sport of such fine margins, you don't want that there. I think the sooner a concrete decision is made on Bellamy's future, the better it will be for the club. So this is my best 17 for the Storm this year. Obviously the two main talking points I have already covered in Nick Meaney at centre and Suat Falonga on the bench. But there is a lot of depth and competition for spots in this team, I believe. You've got the likes of Bronson Garlick playing in 14. You've got Tyron Wishart, who will be putting pressure on that position. Christian Welch in the front row, who is a very, very talented forward. He's played Origin in recent years, but came back from an ACL last season and wasn't quite at his best. Not many people know this, but he's actually relinquished his role with the Rugby League Players Association in order to focus entirely on his form with the Storm, and I think that that is a fantastic move for him. Looking at this squad 1 to 17, I think it has the ability to beat any other team on their day, and so for that reason I cannot rule out the Storm as a contender coming into this new year. It seems like every year people write off the Storm. They say, they're not quite as good as they were last year on paper. This will be the year that they fall down and maybe finish at the bottom of the top 8 or possibly even miss the finals entirely. And yet, every single season, they manage to get pretty much a top 4 finish. And there's absolutely no way I'm going to predict them anything other than a top 4 finish this season. I don't know if you can ever call the Storm a smoky, but they would probably be my smoky in terms of a side that can win the comp this year that isn't your Panthers or Broncos. So obviously, as usual, let me know your thoughts on the Storm. Who do you have playing at fullback? Where do you fit in all three of Pappenhausen, Meaney and Fa'alongo? And do you think that Craig Bellamy's future could prove a hindrance on the Storm this year? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.